Okay, students, welcome back to our class. You have completed your cardboard project, and now I am hoping that you are ready to go ahead and go to the next step. I wanted to start with cardboard because cardboard is an artistic material in and of itself, but it also becomes it can become an armature for another object. So with paper mache, some things, just some background information. It means chewed up paper in French. And it was actually the first paper mache objects that we have on human record came about from China in 200 AD. So quite a long time ago. They actually created helmets out of paper mache. They were the first culture to create paper to begin with. And so paper mache kind of requires the use of paper. There is some evidence that some of the ancient Egyptian sarcophagus covers were paper mache as well, but they were using a papyrus and linen. Linen is a woven fabric, but they used a glue to bind it all together. So paper mache by itself, or paper mache requires not only some sort of substance, so like paper or linen or papyrus, but it also requires some sort of binding that holds it together. There are different kinds of paper mache. We have like a paper pulp that can be sculpted, or there's ripped up, torn up pieces of paper that is dipped into a substance and then applied to another surface. The way that we are going to go about doing this for ourselves is we are going to create an armature. The armature is going to take you a chunk of time. When you are done with the armature is then going to be covered with a layer of paper mache, and then you can go ahead and paint the surface and do whatever you want to with it. It is possible that you might not need to paint it depending upon what you choose to do. So there have been situations in some of my classes where we took tissue paper and the color of the tissue paper itself becomes the decorative element. And if I were using tissue paper, I would be more inclined to use something that is not a solid paste itself. So if I were using tissue paper, I would probably use glue and water, or I would use Mod Podge watered down. And in fact, what we've used in class, we've used Mod Podge. The surface looks pretty nice when you're done. It almost kind of looks like stained glass. It's kind of pretty. Another thing that you might choose to do, this right here is just a kitchen serving bowl. It's a little dirty and a little gross. You notice that there's actually a layer of plastic wrap on it. If I chose to paper mache right onto the plastic surface, sometimes the actual object will not pop off from there. And we have destroyed a great many paper mache objects, tragically, that way. So I would take my bowl here and I would cover it in plastic wrap. This is probably the easiest armature you could come up with, but the actual paper macheing part takes much longer. In this case, she used newspapers for the inside, and then when she went to do the outside, so she applied newspapers with the paste material on the bowl. And so she put little pieces, and then she covered the whole last layer on the outside with strips of magazine. And the strips of magazine, just she liked it because she thought the colors were kind of nice. It would be really cool for you to be able to, if you thought about the way you did your collages, you could actually turn this into a collaged picture on the bowl, and that would be something very interesting. So if you want to make a completely practical object, totally fine. I'm not gonna, I might just demonstrate this real quickly, but I'm not gonna go into this in any huge depth, but I will include a video from somebody else on how to do bowls like this. The reason that these take long is that she has probably 10 layers of paper mache. And so she would have to layer a layer of paper mache on here. She would set it aside. It had to dry for up to 24 hours. So when she touched it, it wasn't wet. And then she would do the next layer of paper mache, and she would do the next layer. And it took time and it took patience. And she was very unhappy with how long it took. But then in the end, she's like, oh, it's really cool. And then she meant to take it with her and she never took it with her. So this is one option. The option that I'm going to actually demonstrate, well, here's a second option first. This right here is a Kroger bag. So they used a Kroger bag as an armature, stuffed the Kroger bag up with wads of newspaper, and tied off the Kroger bag. And in fact, this right here, underneath here, is the ties of the Kroger bag. And then what she did is she ripped up her newspaper and she coated the plastic bag, front, back, the whole bit, with her paper mache. We let it dry. She came back and did another layer the next day. We let that dry. She came back the next day. So this right here, because the actual armature is a soft armature, she had to do several layers of paper mache on here to make it hard enough that you could pick it up. You'll notice if you do this that the first couple of times you go to pick it up, it'll start to fall apart a little bit, and you'll have to go back and kind of paper mache over those areas that are kind of falling apart. It's a little finicky, but it leaves you with something that's kind of fun. If those of you who've been at our school in the past, might remember the giant snowmen that we make, and we make them using this material or this process where we do a giant garbage bag, and then we do a smaller garbage bag, and then we do a Kroger bag for the top of the snowman head. So if you want to create decorations for your house for the holidays, I'm totally all about you creating stuff that's practical for your household. Another armature option, if you want to spend a little bit of money, or this is something that you actually have around your house. This is aluminum wire that we bent into the overall form and anchored him together to create my little dinosaur here. And then what I'm doing is, after I have him down, taking newspaper, I probably should have started with newspaper that was the size of his leg to begin with, and this is going to be way too big, but this is a good length, a good size around for his tail. The cool thing about wire is that, you know, if I were to do an animal, I like using wire. Wire is tricky for some people because it's a different kind of process. But once again, I'm using masking tape. And what I will do is I will actually masking tape it tighter and tighter and tighter so that his tail gets gradually smaller. Once I have him all wrapped and taped up before I start the actual paper mache process, I can actually still bend his body, which that's kind of why I like wire. However, once I start paper macheing him, I will not be able to bend his body. So this will give me the opportunity to position him the way that I want him to be before I do that. And I can make sure that he stands up well. So this is one kind of armature. So we had the bowls, a plastic bowl or a plastic, you can do a tray. A plastic tray would be fine. You can use Kroger bags and stuffed with stuff. You can use wire. And then because you already have cardboard, maybe you have a lot of cardboard that's just kind of all over, you can also use cardboard. And this is what I'm actually going to be demonstrating on. So where I have to build up layer after layer and layer of paper mache on my plastic bags, this cardboard is going to be a little stiffer. He's got some girth to him. He's not squishy. So he's only going to require a couple layers of paper mache in the very end. And for him, the paper mache just becomes a surface. So this project right here was several different boxes that she used, and she had taped together, and she used the paper mache to create a smooth uniform surface over her entire structure. And then she went back and she could apply the paint. So this is going to be more along the lines of my dinosaur over here. So the way that I'm going to go about this, I have his body. I want to kind of create a shape here to kind of fill that in because I want his body rounded. We're making something three-dimensional. So I'm going to take my sheet of newspaper. And I know that I'm looking for something that's kind of triangular. So I'm going to start with, I'm not squeezing it super tight. But I can certainly manipulate it into the shape that I want. And also, newspaper kind of gets a little grouchy. But if you can kind of tuck it into itself a little bit, it kind of leaves a smoother surface. And if you have a smoother surface, it's easier to tape. So on my dinosaur, I started out with cardboard. And then I'm using the newspaper. So if you think about it, my cardboard is kind of like the skeleton. It's clearly not a skeleton, but it forms the basis. It forms the harder structure. And then my newspaper becomes the muscles and the fat and the other material on top of here. So I have myself a little bit of a wedge, and I'm going to, I can tape the wedge into this side, or I can tape the wedge into this side. Like so. I have to tell you, while I'm doing this, I was looking at your guys' cardboard sculptures that you're starting to turn in, and these are the best sculptures that I have seen come out of this class, and I'm so excited. And I kind of wonder if it's because you are working at home, you kind of have the opportunity and the space to be able to explore the medium a little bit better. And while I'm doing this, I can take the moment to tell you, it is my goal for the year, possibly in future years, my classroom is going to be an open studio. And what I mean by that, I'm going to try it out for a couple of weeks and we're going to see how it goes. You're going to have these sculptures, and I'm assuming that it's going to be easier to do them at home and to not have to transport them to school for 2 days while you're here and then transport them back home. So while you're in school, I'm going to encourage you to use that time to either come up with your ideas for your next project. We might do some sewing and stuff while we're here, and I might have some project overlap. But what I kind of want to start out with, I kind of want to see, you know, if I leave it as an open studio and you can do math homework here in my room and you can talk to me and ask me questions, that kind of stuff. And then you go home and you use your home time instead of doing math, you use your home time to do your artwork. That's kind of what I want to do, but I'm not sure if it'll work or not. So everything in art, for better or for worse, everything in art is kind of a experiment, practice, and let's see how it works. So I'm going to start with this experiment. We're going to see what happens with it, and then we're going to go from there. Okay, so I'm starting to build this in. Over here, I started adding a leg. Now, if I'm thinking about, clearly we've never seen what a stegosaurus looks like with his legs. We look at other animals that are similar to stegosauruses, and we can make assumptions about what stuff looks like. But as I'm thinking in my head about every lizard I've seen, and every even birds and dogs and cats and stuff, there isn't a completely smooth transition between this and the actual body. There's usually it kind of comes up and it kind of goes into an indentation and it comes out. So when I go to tape these pieces, I'm really going to be thinking about using this tape, thinking about it in terms of skin, maybe starting in with that groove that's down here and wrapping this around and making sure that those pieces of tape really define that space. So we talk about using lines to define like a shape here, something like that when we're doing a drawing. Well, we're using this tape to define this. Now, I ran into the problem that his leg started sinking and it started pulling here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up on the underneath and I'm going to tape this so that it holds it into place where it needs to be. If you need, like I said, if you need newspapers, if you need cardboard, if you need any of this stuff, if you need masking tape, call me, or not call me, but email me and let me know, and you can come here and pick it up. I have some of this stuff here. This right here is not cardboard. This is just leftover bubble wrap I have. You can go through your recycle bins. I've had kids who've used milk jugs and have cut apart milk jugs. I've had kids, I mean, you have like all kinds of stuff in your house. You can use cereal boxes if you want to use cereal boxes. So get creative, see what you have, and create your armatures. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything, just let me know. The sky is the limit with this. I'm giving you the materials. I'm giving you the medium, telling you what to do with medium, and you get to choose what it is that you're making. I had a few of you asking about the cardboard and what you could and couldn't do with it. And I said, the sky's the limit. This doesn't have to be something recognizable. This can be something completely abstract. And I'll put some crazy shapes and some crazy abstract sculptures on your Canvas site too, so you can take a look at those. But yeah, we'll get started. And then in the next day or two, I will have the next video out showing you the actual ripping of the paper, mixing the paper mache medium. I'll show you the glue method too, just so that you have that. It requires a lot of glue. So that's just a fair warning. And we'll talk to you later. Have a good day.